Welcome, welcome to TAP, everyone. So happy that you're here with me again today. I wanted to just take a moment to honor that we have so many great different voices on this podcast, and in particular, people who work in the field of astrology or healing or therapy. And when I have different astrologers on, I sometimes wonder if people get confused because we do have each our own unique lens that we work with astrology through, and all our different journeys and past experiences, all of that influence the way that we interpret the very same symbols. So I just want to invite you to not get too upset with different interpreters, and just see it all as inspiration for you to just pick up whatever resonates and go from there with your own journey. So that obviously counts. That's obviously something in every podcast. It should be that way, that you have that kind of mindset. But I'll just speak for my own podcast. That is certainly what I hope that you do. That not fixate on, oh, it's just now we're talking about, because a few times ago we were also having a chat example, and there were some different interpretations of particular planets, and not to get fixated on that's then the meaning, but that it has many layers to it, and it really depends on also who is opening this, I think, a very sacred tool to what is reality. And today we have yet another voice, and I'm very, very pleased to present you Venus Salem. Welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
I want to introduce you, but I'm just going to cheat because it's a little long. You are a trauma-informed, holistic, psychosexual relationship therapist, right?
Correct. Yes.
Good. Sounds wonderful. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And I was really hoping to have a chat with you about sexuality and astrology.
Mm. Yeah.
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 So, first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Lovely to be here with you. And thank you for that wonderful introduction, because I was going to say exactly that. I was going to say how, when it comes to relationship astrology, studying it throughout the years, I've been fascinated by how different astrologers have approached it so differently. There is literally no one way of looking at how we relate on the chart, whether it's synastry or composite or progressive. It's been quite a journey to study all of it, and then actually come up with my own thing. So just to, yeah, a disclaimer that yes, I've come up with my own thing, and hopefully it will resonate. I mean, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. It's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned before we started recording that there's also this piece of channeling. I feel the same actually when you open up the chat and you have all of this knowledge, but then something happens, right? And then that's the intuitive part.
Absolutely, yes. And I would argue that most of astrology is channeling, not just technical looking at it. In fact, when I just look at it technically, I make no sense of it. But
Yeah.
you open that third eye, so much comes through.
Yeah, I recognize that. It's just like a brain block. Like, I don't know what does this mean, but then you can be a channel for something else. Yeah. So I have many questions for you. So let's get started. No, actually, the reason I also am curious to hear how you're doing is, you have right now, you're in a Saturn opposition, right?
As, sorry, I've certain opposition. Did you say? Yes, you mean Saturn opposition? Yeah.
Yeah, Saturn opposition. Yeah, it's kind of, I think maybe you're kind of past it now, or in the middle of it or something, depending on how you count it. But
Well, it's just my luck. Saturn already went past it, and then he's retrograde and gone back again, and then is going back forwards again. And I happen to have a whole stellium in Virgo, sixth placement, so it's hitting all my planets. So
is
yeah.
it doing something good for you?
Yes. I mean, after all the suffering, yes, it's worth it.
Great. Okay. But so let me ask you about your knowledge in terms of sexuality and astrology. Where would you look for that sexual spark in a person's chart? How do you go about?
That's a very good question. So when I'm looking at relationships, and so I first have to study each person's natal chart on its own and see whether there is something going on for them sexually, even outside of the marriage, or is it actually occurring inside the marriage? Something around how their planets are activating one another, right? So sometimes I will see someone's sexuality that is afflicted in some way, especially with like childhood trauma, sexual abuse usually, and things like that. And so their story is very much around this piece, how to connect sexually, how to experience intimacy with someone else. And remember, as a sex therapist, I only see the dysfunctional cases, not the functional ones, right? Um, so, and and there's also the case of when a couple comes together, then it becomes a difficulty. It could be not a childhood thing or something from the past. It could very much be something relational within that relationship. And it could be caused by something completely other than the sexuality. It could be a communication piece. It could be an intimacy piece. It could be, um, a self-worth piece.
And to you, yes, like you say, they come to you because they have issues around, "Oh, I want to learn more about how to be in that sexual relationship." But do you then ask for the information for a chart, or are you open that you say, "Oh, I'm also an astrologer," and
Yes. So I always start with my my therapist hat on.
yeah,
I don't want to scare people
yeah,
away.
exactly.
So I always begin as a therapist, with this therapist hat on, and then, as the sessions go, when I feel that a moment is right to say, how about we introduce the astrology aspect to this? And, they get curious, at that point, they trust me enough to trust that I know what I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
then we look at their charts. And then, my favorite part is always the aha look on their face, like, yes, that's me. I see my story. And yes, it's wonderful how it takes on a whole other, it's almost like you inject them with a lifeline. You throw a lifeline to them, and they're able to see their story in a completely different light,
Mm,
and therefore tackle the problem in a very different way.
mm, okay. Yeah, actually, I'm curious about that. How does that work? If you were already doing some therapy, then your astrology comes in and
Mm,
you say, okay, now they can see it from a completely different perspective.
yeah.
What does that change?
Well, first of all, it changes how frequent they come and see me, because usually after that they don't need to see me very often.
That's the problem with astrology. Now we know.
Yes, now we know that's a shortcut. They don't need to come to therapy for a whole year. It's just like a few sessions and it's done. Um, but the transition do you mean the transition from regular therapy to
Yeah,
astrological based therapy?
I think it's really interesting what
Mm.
difference it's actually doing in the therapy, bringing in the astrology.
So bringing in the astrology, I mean, it varies. It really varies. Some people are ready for it. And not only are they ready for it, they want to absorb all of it. They want to know more. They want to learn more. And they go off and then start their own astrology rabbit hole, uh, because they just feel seen. They feel like they found something quite precious. And others, it scares them, to be quite frank. It scares them how much I can reveal to them through just symbols that they don't understand.
Yeah.
And also if they're not ready to, because the thing about astrology is it moves you from victim consciousness to empowered consciousness. The I am, okay, yeah, these are my gifts, and these are the challenges I've been given, and through them I've been able to empower myself and grow and evolve. Am I ready to step into that?
Mm,
And some people are, and some people are not, and that's just fact of life.
yeah. So it must be so interesting. So did you start your journey with being curious around sexuality and then astrology, or astrology first? How did you begin?
um I think they were going, without realizing, they were going in parallel paths.
Mm.
So I think I've always been, I'm sure you've seen it on my chart. I have Venus Cazimi. So
Right.
I've always been about relationships and connection. And I'm wanting to understand, why do some relationships work and why they don't? Why am I constantly getting heartbroken, and how do I do relating better? It was truly an obsession for me.
Mhm.
And I'm a Virgo, very heavily a Virgo. So
Yeah.
I went through many career changes, again, experimenting with how people connect and how people don't. And I seem to have gotten as I evolve, I learn more and more. But I realized I'm very good at giving relationship advice, but I can't seem to figure it out for myself still. So anyway, fast forward, fast forward, and I happened across astrology through I can't remember her name now, the very famous moonologist, Yasmin Boland.
Oh, right.
I took an online course with her, and it was a very brief one, and didn't really, it wasn't really enough for me to then say, oh yes, I know enough now to go and escape and do more. But it put me on the right path to be curious enough to then go, okay, well, I kind of get some. Now let's go and see if I could get some more. And at the same time, so this was back in 2018, right? And then 2 years later, COVID happened and
Mm.
lockdown. And that's when I started training as a relationship therapist and
Ah,
sex therapist. Because I knew that I wanted to be a therapist for
mm,
sure. And
mm.
I definitely knew also that it had to do something with relationships. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. So it was interesting that both those paths were evolving for me, both the clinical sexology and relationship therapy side and the astrology side by side.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually start thinking about them together until perhaps maybe 3 years ago,
Mhm.
so 2021. So it wasn't too far. So it was about a year into training as a sex therapist.
Mm.
And then I started looking for myself, looking at people's charts, not necessarily sharing it with them, but just like trying to gather information. So you're giving me information about you and your life and your sexuality and your relational difficulties. And I want to see, what does that look like on the map, on your natal signature. And I started to collect like a database of understanding how what different patterns look like on the chart, what certain difficulties look like on the chart. Also people who have repetitive patterns, no matter how much healing you do, there's still this persistent pattern. Where does it come from? And I can see how specifically Pluto plays a massive part in a lot of these um, repetitive patterns that don't seem to end, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
Ah, interesting. But so it don't seem to end, but uh, I mean, if I'm to translate what I mean by the word therapy, it is there is something you can do about your life. There is something you can do to get better. That's what I mean about the word therapy and therapeutic. It's like there's literally something you can do. So that's the hopeful part, right? That we have the astrology, the Pluto, or whatever it seems to continue, but there's something that can be done, and that's why people see you, right?
Yes. So what do you do? I have a question for you. What do you do when your Venus is semi-square Pluto in the 11th house? Let me
Mhm.
tell you what that can look like. All right. Always being in relationships where you are the other woman.
Okay. Uh,
Okay.
okay, I need to have that slowly. Can you say it again? Venus
Yes.
is
So
semi-square.
Venus, say in the 10th house,
Yeah.
semi-square Pluto in the 11th house.
Okay.
All right. And that's the way it looks like in reality, is that this person always ends up being the other woman. Even when she goes into relationships, there's no other woman in sight, a woman shows up, another woman. And we're talking about extramarital affairs, or someone leaving her for an ex, for example. It doesn't matter,
Mhm.
but there's always another woman. And when she was in a relationship where there wasn't another woman, she's the one who wanted to go and have an extramarital affair.
And this is a pattern that you've seen regardless of sign. I was gonna say
No,
house, but
I'm thinking of a very specific example,
okay.
right? I mean, definitely when you talk to the people I have spoken to, and I've looked at how Pluto plays out, we have a lot of even like someone like Frida Kahlo
Yeah.
and Rivera, for example, right? She had Venus and Pluto in the 10th house in Gemini.
Mhm. Venus
And
and Pluto in Gemini.
yes,
Okay.
Venus conjunct Pluto in Gemini.
Yeah.
So, and we all know her love story with Diego Rivera, right? I mean, obviously, his chart also had a lot of indications that he's not someone who can go about a committed relationship.
Mm.
Um, but you think, why did she stay, for example? And obviously, there was a evolutionary purpose to both of them staying together because their relationship was very much part of the art that they presented to the world.
Mm. Mm. Interesting. Yeah. 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 That ties into the question. I mean, how much are we even supposed to leave our circumstances because it can be of great value as it is.
Mhm.
But I would say that when you have a huge Pluto influence in your chart, you are propelled to change. Like you have to change. I don't know in particular that Frida Kahlo. I'm not deep into that story, but just from. But anyway, let me ask you. Um, I don't want to sit and talk. I want to hear you talk. Let me ask you about if you've seen other interesting signatures around. Maybe what about a good match? I know you work mostly with dysfunction, but do you have ideas around what could be a good match if you have two birth charts, you know, interested in each other?
Well, okay, it begs the question, what is a good match? What does a
Yes.
good match look like?
Yeah.
And what is the purpose of it? Because what I have realized is that relationships are intended to be the crucible for change, the crucible for evolution. There is no greater alchemy that can occur for one's own soul's evolution more powerful than a relationship,
Wow. Wow.
right? So what is a good relationship?
So you're saying relationship is the biggest catalyzer for change.
Absolutely.
So that could be that's Pluto again we're talking about, isn't it?
Well, it's plutonic in its nature, but not necessarily.
Uh,
And also we talk about the eighth house. The eighth house is of transformation as well, isn't it? So also it's that scorpionic energy. But even if we don't have strong scorpionic um, aspects in our chart, a relationship is going to change you.
mm,
Whether I mean, starting with your relationship with your mother, your relationship with your father, your relationship with your siblings, any relationship is going to change you.
right.
And so when you choose someone to spend a significant amount of time with, forever or a short time, whatever, the intensity of that relationship is going to bring up things inevitably, because that's why we choose them. We subconsciously choose people who we know subconsciously are going to help us heal or alchemize a certain aspect of our personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what is a good relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't help to think about the comment you had before, like something like you don't seem to have it figured out yet or something with the relationship part, but because it's so huge,
Hmm?
right? It's so deep. It's like you say, it's what we attract, and why do we attract it? Because it's supposed to heal us, and that healing is not necessarily easy.
No. And it's definitely not for the faint-hearted, right? And a lot of people do enter relationships and don't change. They accept what it is that they've got, the deal that they have, and they continue going. And I think it's also generational. So, I mean, I haven't studied it deeply enough yet, but there's definitely a difference between the relationships our grandparents had, our parents had, we have and the future generations are going to have, right? I
Ah,
mean, just look at how different and what different names we have for the different types of relationships we have these days. They never existed before.
mm.
You know, I mean, people were really up in arms around polygamy, and yet now we have polyamory. You know, so there is something generational shifting about relationships too that we can't ignore.
For sure. I think that has a lot to do with Pluto. I don't, is there's just this one word for so many layers of meaning. So it
Yeah.
can seem a little reductionist, but it's just another point about Pluto is the Pluto generations and how that plays out in relationships. And
Mm.
how, I mean, yeah, it's like what you're saying is what is our aim? What is our purpose for this relationship? Because if the purpose is to stay together forever,
Mm-hmm.
that like that is the purpose, then I mean, I would surely have handled myself differently, right? But if my purpose is to have someone that I'm constantly going to grow and evolve with, then it might not be a match to staying together forever.
Yes, exactly. And also, again, it depends on our masochistic, sadistic tendencies, you know?
Say more
That,
about that.
sorry?
Say more about that.
Well, you know, even when I'm studying kink and BDSM and masochism and sadism, it's definitely in the charts. You know, I can see it in this, you know, a lot of scorpionic energy there and a lot of power dynamic. You know, my favorite quote ever around sex is everything is about sex except for sex. Sex is about power.
Oh man.
Exactly.
And you feel that is hitting a nerve. Why?
Because, you know, when you even look at the culture we're in, you know, how is sex utilized to uh, in relationships, in our relationship to, you know, consumerism and what we consume, you know, what is our idea of sexy? Like everything is sexy, right?
Mhm.
And we want to be sexy and we think about sex all the time and things like that. So, but what is it really about? It's definitely never just about the intimacy and the connection. That's obviously that is a part of it. But power absolutely power dynamics absolutely play a massive role when it comes to sex. You know, just thinking about, you know, who's on top and who's on the bottom, that alone, you know, we don't even have to go too deep with it.
But let's go a little deeper because you just said a few words that got me curious. What did you say? Like different fetishes,
Mhm.
kinks, and so all of this sexology that you are working with, how is that a match? And I hope I don't come across as judgmental, but I probably am. How is that a match to higher knowledge, intuitive, channeling, spirit? How, it's like the primitive meeting.
Mm.
How do you work with that?
Well, you know, if I'm working with someone who, okay, if I'm working with someone who, I'm just really careful not to give too much details about, and I don't like sharing any details about clients, but so I'm going to start change the story
Yeah.
to make it a little bit vague. But someone who really their own obsession with sex is about having as many women as possible,
Okay.
right? As many women as possible. And it's, you know, refuses to engage in any committed relationship.
Hmm.
And then I look at their chart and I see Pluto in Scorpio in the 10th house. Okay. And
Hmm.
I see the moon in Sagittarius on the ascendant.
Okay.
That's automatically like a sex cult kind of thing, right? So that's one example. The very common placements around kink and BDSM are usually, or let's say experimental, you know, people who are very experimental with sex. That's usually a Venus or a Mars in Scorpio.
Okay.
And, you know, if you add Pluto in the mix as well in Scorpio, that could be really, that you could look at really submissive, um, you know, submissive, sorry, like, you know, femdom versus master versus slave dynamics,
Okay.
wanting to experiment with all of that. You look at, for example, if these placements are in the 11th house, then you are looking at needing a spectator, needing it to be a bit more public, involving other people, you know, or maybe, you know, there's Gemini in there as well. It's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I've
it's,
definitely heard that with Gemini. Any
yeah,
air sign probably would
yeah,
like some kind of observer.
yes. So I absolutely see a link between what people bring to my clinic and how their natal chart, what their natal chart looks like. And it's fascinating.
But do you see what I mean? Like it's, I guess, I don't even know how to ask the question. What is it that you help people with if they, I mean, is it just natural to have a, a wild sexuality like that? Is it, do you just see it like it's just natural, or is some of it distorted and not a match for a life with spirit? Is kind of what I'm asking.
Yes, now that's a very different question
Yeah.
altogether.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you know, if that it depends on the person. If they come to me complaining about, you know, I'm into all these things, but I'm really not, I feel a lot of shame around it and I need to improve I want to be change my habits, my sexual habits, shall we say, you
Mm.
know, then even that will be shown in the chart,
Mm.
you know. Though, because most of the time the people I see, they don't have a problem with that, and spirit is not really a question for them. Like, they're more, maybe at that stage in their life, they're more interested in experimentation and living out their sexual fantasies.
Mm.
Who's to say though that later down the line, when they've hit their Uranus opposition or had another Saturn opposition or whatever, you know, they've grown in awareness, they've grown in consciousness, they've grown in maturity, that, you know, a transit, one of those transits will create a crisis of, you know, what about your connection to spirit?
Mm.
And I think we're going to see more and more of that with the coming generations, you know, with the Neptunian influence. Perhaps, you know, especially with the, I'm thinking Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn
Mm.
generation.
Mm.
I'm seeing a lot of very interesting conversations there
Ah. Around sexuality, you mean?
around sexuality, around their how they see power, because Capricorn is about power, you know, authority, status quo.
Yeah.
And Uranus in there is basically wanting to break free from that and challenging everything that they've been told and given. You
Mm.
know, those generations don't, they are not going to just hear what you say and take it. They're going to challenge it.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see.
Yeah, we like that. We need that
Yes,
at this point. Okay, so are you into combining sexuality and spirituality?
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, sexual energy is spiritual energy.
Okay, say something about that. I need to hear that.
Absolutely.
Sexual
Right.
energy is spiritual energy.
Sexual energy is absolutely spiritual energy. It's your spirit, and when it's blocked or when there's a lot of shame around your sexuality, your spirit it's contracted. It doesn't express itself. It's too afraid to shine.
Mm.
Um, and you know that's why even as a sex therapist, what I see when I see clients or patients who come in with sexual problems, I immediately know their spirit is blocked in some way, right? It's blocked in some way because of the relationship with their partners, or blocked in some way because of their relationship to spirit,
Mm.
or they're doing something that they don't feel is right for them.
Mm.
You know, I think sexuality, sex in general as a theme in public, has just become
Mm.
too casual, too lightly handled. And I see the result of that in my clinic because with the rise of vaginismus, with the rise of erectile dysfunctions and things like that, I can see that people are engaging in sexual acts just for the sake of engaging with sexual acts. There is no real connection. There is no real search for an intimacy. It's just, just sleep and get up and go kind of thing. And that absolutely impacts their sexual health, not just physically, but spiritually too. So, I'm more inclined now to think of sexual unions. They need to be regarded with a very high regard to the sacredness of those unions. What is your intention? What are you getting out of it? And you need to be very highly conscious of who you're connecting with in that way, why you're doing it, and energetically, what are you risking? Because when you connect with someone in that way, you carry their energy and whatever is blocking their energy for a long time afterwards. So if we even talk about it from an energetic perspective, you are literally carrying that person's energies. Because you think about it, when you connect with someone in that way, your crown chakras are connected and your root chakras are connected straight away. And therefore it's a cycle that goes through all your chakras and all their chakras. So you are inevitably bringing in their energies into yours, and you're giving them your energies into theirs. And you're going to carry them for 7 years. Why 7 years, I don't know.
Saturn, it's a Saturn cycle.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know how it will relate in this. Okay, but you say 7 years just for.
I read it somewhere. I can't tell you, I can't remember now where, but it was an energy teaching book.
Okay, yeah. Saturn is around karma, so, but on a more personal level, I'm really following what you're saying, and I'm also having flashbacks to my earlier self, my younger self, where I did not like to hear that, because I've definitely been very not careful with my sexuality. Let's put it like that. So I didn't like to hear that message, and I would ask many teachers. Like I wanted to find a teacher who would tell me, no, it doesn't affect your energy. It doesn't stay with you. But I couldn't really find that. I mean, so what do you do? Do you just wait for 7 years then? What do you do when you're in the trouble? You feel, I've been with partners and it's not good. How do you clear it?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that your sexual history is significant because it shows you your own spiritual journey. And that spiritual journey, it plays a significant part in who you are becoming. So I would completely discourage any shaming around that kind of past. It's really important to acknowledge the person that you were at the time and the person that you were becoming to reach this point where you've reached a point where you understand your own values, you understand, you've crystallized them for yourself, and therefore reached a stage where you're able to say, you know what, I honor and respect my body, my temple so much. I am now ready to say to my temple, I'm going to protect you and I'm going to save you for something more meaningful because I'm ready for it now.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think my question really relates to, I like how you put that. I really like how you put that. Like your sexual history tells you about, what did you say, like your own personal journey?
A spiritual journey, absolutely.
Yeah. Because I think the question does relate to that time in my life, because I was on one side seeking spiritual wisdom, that was my whole world, and then on the other side, being really promiscuous. And I am dealing with not trying to not shame it. So you're absolutely right about that. I'm better now about not shaming it than I have been, because I understand the good intentions that I had and stuff I was carrying. But so that was a split because I couldn't. It was like I couldn't make myself stop. I couldn't just trust whatever people would tell me to do. I couldn't do that.
Mm.
So do you recognize this split? I think it's a very, you have inherited this split between spirit and matter and control versus just enjoy.
Surrender, yeah. I absolutely do. And that we had to go through that polarity, I think. Um, you know, there is no way when I was younger, if someone told me I had to be, and it's happened, if when my parents said you have to be more religious or I have to follow spirit more, connect to spirit more, the more they said that, the more it aggravated me, and the more I just wanted to rebel against the whole world and burn it down,
Mm.
right? And actually it became a war with, and this is funny, it's strange because then that spiritual energy becomes very sexualized. Like, no, I want to.
Yeah.
I'm very careful not to say the F word on your podcast, but F my way through life kind of thing, you know? And it's again, like, it's become so clear to me now in hindsight. It's really that energy is the only energy that can soften the ego.
Mm.
But when it's ready, when it's received the lessons it needs to get to a point where it can say, you know what, actually, I can calm you down now. You don't need to fight anymore. It's almost like that energy fights for something. It's trying to prove something, trying to prove its worth, trying to prove it's attractive, trying to prove it's powerful. And therefore, it connects with all the things that ego needs to go through to understand what true power is, what true connection is, what true surrender looks like, what true intimacy look like. I can guarantee you there are the vast majority of people in the world don't even know what intimacy look like.
Mm. When you were referring to that energy, do you mean sexual energy?
Yes, it's definitely sexual in its nature.
Mm.
Like the way I understand it as sexual, the link between sexual and spiritual
Mm.
is when I look at ancient Egyptian cosmology. You have the netter with the big phallus sticking out, and then you also have Nut, the sky goddess, and standing like that, and then you got Jeb, the earth god, with his phallus on the floor. And also in Egypt, you'll find the obelisks everywhere, and they're phallic symbols for sure, and they are there to symbolize the constant connection between earth and sky.
Mm.
And so I feel that their philosophy, they were trying to teach us that there is a constant energy between the cosmos and the earth. This plane and the upper planes, the as above, so below, and is sexual.
Mm.
It looks sexual, but actually is spirit.
Mm.
When you look at metaphysically speaking, first there was the nothing, and then the nothing became said, it wants to experience itself, and then it split itself into two, the minus and the negative, which is the feminine and the masculine, as we know today. And then that split into three, the holy child. It's all energy. And the way we understand it is through sexuality, but it's actually spirit recreating itself.
Wow. I don't want you to stop talking. Keep talking. This is good. This is definitely it's landing and I'm in some philosophy here with you. I see. I mean, because it is a fictitious split. It's not a real split like that, between spirit and matter or spirit and sexuality. I see that because you kind of need your spirit in that sexual act.
Exactly. It's
And this,
always embedded in there.
yeah,
There's no split really. And
there's,
actually, that's the key of life in the hieroglyphics. That looks like a cross, but it's actually, I'm wearing it now. Don't you can see it. So it looks like a Venus sign, right?
oh, it was Venus. Okay.
right? It looks like a Venus sign. It's called the Ankh, or the key of life. And it's actually a symbol of spirits connected to matter.
Mhm.
Always. It's a reminder that spirit and matter are intricate, are inseparable until death.
Mhm.
Death do us part, literally.
Yeah. So was that what you were critiquing before when you said people that don't really know what intimacy is, and you have this experience that people sleep together and they just want that and not something more soulful? Is that what you're critiquing or what?
So a lot of the difficulties that men and women experience in the bedroom are related to performative sex.
Wow.
Okay. I
Yeah.
see it every day. And
Okay.
basically, it's because for men, for example, they're so focused on performing. I mean, there's always so much pressure
Mm.
on men and on women because sex is just everywhere.
Yeah.
And movies and porn sites are now just a click away, and it's too much. And especially porn, it shows examples of really unrealistic sex,
Mm.
which is very performative. So, especially if you're a young man and you're watching this and comparing your size to that size and looking what he does and how much pleasure she's getting apparently and so on, the obsession becomes on performance.
Mhm.
And when that happens, there is a disconnect between spirit and body because spirit doesn't want a performance. Spirit wants to feel a connection.
Mm.
It wants to merge, it wants to lose itself. It doesn't want to feel the body anymore. It just wants to feel the ecstasy and bliss of connection with another soul.
Okay, we don't have very much time left, and I have just thought of a new big question for you. Uh, what about orgasm?
Yeah. What about orgasm?
Maybe that's what you were just speaking about here, like the bliss and the release. But if we really want just the orgasm in order to release tension, then like you say, it's just a click away in terms of pornography. But is that then a problem?
Well, this is why you get problems like delayed ejaculation or premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction altogether. Women who aren't able to orgasm altogether. Textbooks tell you that 10% of women never reached orgasm in their lives. And I'm here to tell you honestly, it's a lot more than that.
Okay, yeah.
A lot more than that. Women don't even know what an orgasm is. You
Mm.
will never hear that about men, because if it were true about men, then the world would go upside down and inside out trying to find a solution.
Yeah,
But because it's women, it's okay. But anyway,
that's
that argument aside.
that's because of reproduction as well, right? Like if
Exactly.
we have an orgasm, we wouldn't. Yeah. So
Yeah. So we need at least a man to be able to orgasm in order for us to reproduce, and that's
yeah.
always a priority. So it just tells you that primitively speaking, we still don't really understand what ecstasy and pleasure in sex actually means,
Mm.
because we have created a culture that is so focused on performance and just wanting and lust and greed,
Mhm.
as opposed to real spiritual connection, real connection to the numinous inside the other, right? And I mean, this is just also to explain to you how orgasm is totally unrelated to performance. I know, and my personal experience too, women who literally done nothing, not even thought about sex, and just sat in complete connection and bliss with the divine, just meditating and thinking about the sacredness of life and the sacredness of source. And then all of a sudden, they experience what I would call a cosmic orgasm.
Wow.
Like your entire body, every single cell in your body just bursts with ecstasy, and you see colors and your whole body just comes alive. It's incredible, better than any physical orgasm you could ever experience. And it's not genital related. So
And
what does that tell you about orgasm?
it's not related to genitals. So,
Mhm.
w- uh, uh, yeah, what does that tell me about orgasms? That it's a full body
It's a spiritual experience.
spiritual experience.
And also, even when we, if I was to stick to the textbooks, we know that the orgasm happens in the mind,
Yeah.
not the body. I mean, the body shows it, but it happens here first. And if your mind is, cluttered with, when am I going to do the laundry? What am I going to make for dinner? And, am I looking fat in this? And so on. If that's where your mind is, then the quality of the orgasm you're going to have, even when you have it, is not going to be life-changing.
Yeah. It's not a turn on,
No.
turn off with all of those practical things and traditional roles. Um, could be a potential turn off. I guess depends on what you're into. But so what is your opinion and experience with pornography in terms of, is that mm, yeah, no, I hear you. Like it's possible to have it without even touching yourself.
Absolutely.
Then you can have the orgasm.
Mhm.
So is it a trap for us to go to something like porn to ejaculate sooner, easy?
You know what? Many sex therapists would shoot me for saying what I'm about to say, but I absolutely believe that the worst thing that happened to us as a human race is pornography.
Okay.
And the fact that we have so many pornography addicts, um, and we treat compulsive sexual behavior, which large amount of it is related to pornography. That tells you that we have gone so the opposite way of considering sexual connection as a sacred connection, a sacred union between two people.
Mm.
So, it's a realization you get the older you get, and like I said, your sexual journey is very much your spiritual journey. And you had those specific experiences with those specific people, and even when the sex was bad, even that was relevant to your sexual journey, right? Because it told you something about who you were becoming and who you were being in that moment in time. Yeah.
Mm.
And why you accepted what you accepted. It's and why you didn't speak up, for example, when it didn't
Oh,
feel right, when it didn't feel good,
oh man.
right? It's complex and it's deep.
Oh, never really talk
And
about it. Oh, yeah. Because you're also trauma informed, right? You're trauma informed. So I mean, how things, scenes or imaginations we can have that gets us off, that like this can trigger an orgasm potentially, um, can be really distorted, these images, and
yeah,
can directly relate to where we've been wounded.
absolutely. Absolutely. How many feminist warriors fantasize about being raped, for example?
Yeah.
You know? Um, but the difference is, in an intimate and safe relationship, they can role play.
Mm.
If they're both feeling comfortable and safe doing it, that's fine.
Okay.
We are a very complex species.
Yeah.
And we, just looking at our astrology, you can see that not everyone gets ticked on or turned on by the same things. And many of us get put off by this, by, things that I could be put off by something that turns someone else on,
Yeah.
right? We are very, very complex species. And the trick is to really find the safety, a partnership that is a container for safe,
Mm.
intimate conversations around these things, where, yes, I can share with you that, this really uh, strange for me fantasy that may surprise and shock you, but I'm sharing it with you because I feel that you will understand that this is just my physical needs. This is how my physicality wants to experience you and how I want to experience that. It's like it goes back to the same quote I told you. Everything is about sex except for sex. Sex is about power.
It's a good one. Ah, okay. So, but do you then say we can only have sex within a partnership?
Um, I understand that this is something, there is a kind of evolution around it, right? I mean, I might not understand it and it doesn't may not appeal to me, but I know for there are others who need it at that stage in their lives, right? So I'm able to look at it without judgment.
Mm.
And in fact be very curious around it, you know, if you require, you know, polyamorous relationships, and or if you require to have intimacy with two other people. I'm always curious to learn, you know, how is it fulfilling, and in what ways is it fulfilling, um, and you know, what kind of intimacy is it? I think intimacy in general is the most delicious thing one can experience, right? And I haven't actually met anyone um, who is, for example, in a polyamorous relationship where they practice sex in as a threesome or more on a regular basis. So yeah, and I can't really comment to that.
Mhm. No, and I mean, it's not like this is the way it is sort of stuff. Apropos our beginning, the disclaimer, we're all on a unique path. But it is interesting to hear like what someone like you is suggesting because you study this field. This is what you do, and someone like me, I come from a background where we don't speak about sexuality. So I
Same.
tend to, right, same, yeah. So I tend to have many questions, and I always like want to hear.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm just thinking out loud now, you know, people who want to experience that intensity, that sexual intensity with many partners at once, or something like really what others would call radical
Mm.
or really intense, that's usually Pluto at play. Right? And that's usually an experience you have to have because Pluto's telling you to. Pluto's telling you to do that.
Mm.
And there's a transformation in there for you.
Mm.
See,
Yeah.
that I understand, and that I appreciate and trust, because
Yeah.
and it will give you whatever you need to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay. Um, one last question.
Mhm.
Um, okay, now I think I'm gonna ask you this. I have choices to make in my mind about what to ask you, but no, okay. Two questions then. Just the one question is when you say that, I come to think about this issue that it's been going on for years, but that women tend to feel that men are not, they're lagging behind in terms of consciousness, in terms of being aware. And then how do we then, but because then if we need that partnership in
Mm.
order for everything that you've been talking about evolving through sexuality and spirituality,
Mm.
then that's the problem. What do
Yeah.
you,
Well, so I feel that yes, absolutely, there's so much that we can evolve through in relationships, but there's also a lot we can evolve through on our own,
Mm,
in relation to ourselves,
yeah.
you know. Um, and in terms of, you know, the awareness of men and women and men lagging behind, you know, I think the times that we're in right now are just so strange.
Mm,
There's I don't think there is anyone who can really explain what we're going through as a species right now.
mm,
So chaotic and so unstable.
yeah.
Um, and yes, the feminine is not really trusting the masculine, and the masculine is not really trusting the feminine. You know, it's like an infinite loop right now, a wound here and a wound there. And it's interesting because you know, these are the generations that we're talking about here are the generation with Chiron and Taurus and Chiron and Aries. So the masculine and the feminine.
Mm, right.
And also the generation of Pluto and Libra and the
Yeah.
generation of Pluto and Scorpio,
Yeah.
right? Who's to, and also coming soon at a cinema near you, Pluto and Aquarius generation.
That's,
What are they gonna make of our sexuality, you
you know,
know?
I'm glad you bring it up because that's my last question to you. That is exactly my last question to you is about that. What is that next generation? How is partnerships gonna look, do you think?
Oh dear God. I don't know. Are we still going to partner with the other humans?
Ah, yeah.
You know, are we talking extraterrestrial here? I don't know. It's Aquarius, so
Yeah.
expect the unexpected. Truly.
New inventions. Yeah. Combining things that don't belong together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we saw what Pluto and Scorpio did, right? And how open we are now about looking at the spectrum of genders and different relationships and sexuality and so on. I think Pluto and Aquarius is gonna really um yeah, make our heads spin.
Yeah.
We us the old, we'll be quite old by then. It's like, oh, in my day.
I'll tell you what happened. No, but probably in a positive mindset, it would be more tolerance for different kind of partnerships. Don't you
I'd
think?
like to think so. I'd like to think so.
Mm.
Tolerance for different kinds of partnerships. What
Maybe
is it going to mean
tolerance
for us as a
within.
species?
Oh,
Sorry?
sorry. I was just thinking, maybe also tolerance within the partnership. That would be great as well.
Well,
Tolerance for differences. But sorry, what were you saying?
um, yeah, the more I try and imagine it, the more I know that I'm off
Yeah,
because it's going to be unimaginable.
we don't know.
So it's going to be revolutionary. It's definitely going to be, we're going to relate in ways that are quite different. I mean, obviously Pluto was an Aquarius before, and perhaps that started a little bit more of the movement around liberty around sex. Like you don't need to be married to have sex. You could have sex outside of marriage and so on. That started growing a little bit and it started in France and spread then across Europe and so on. But it hasn't spread everywhere, right? Till today,
No.
it's still in certain cultures, it's still a big taboo.
Yeah.
But also, I feel that there is also a kind of, the tides are turning as well again around like this conversation we're having around is casual sex really the way to go? Shouldn't we be considering it with more uh, respect to the sacredness of the union, of
Mm.
the sexual energy between us,
Mm.
right? So you've got, I feel that it's going to be all of it.
Yeah.
All of it is going to be on the table.
Mm. Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. Having conversations about it. That's
Mm,
also an Aquarius things. How do we get ideas is to talk with different people, you know, get
yes.
ideas around this. Yeah.
And make it all okay and all judgment free. And I think that's what Pluto and Aquarius is going to really be about. Judgment free zone around talking about our relationships and sexuality and things like that, and learning from one another around, the respecting the different views, the cultural views around this. I don't think there's ever going to be one, it never was a one size fits all or one ideology fits all around sex. So more tolerance, hopefully.
Yes. Yes. For whatever fits
Mm.
that person or that group. Venus Salem, thank you so much for being here on tap. Will you just mention your website for
Yes.
people?
So I have a couple of websites. I have the www.houseofhetert, spelled HETHERT.com.
That is
Is
what I didn't want to say myself, so I'm glad you did it.
that's where my all of my stuff that I do is there, and there's an astrology course coming up in the 1st of November on the Day of the Dead. It's gonna
Oh,
be a 9-month container going through the archetypes. So if anyone
good.
is interested in that, you're welcome to look it up.
Mhm.
But yeah, and I, as you know, I relate psychosexual and relationship therapist.
Mhm.
Astrology as using astrology as a way of helping people get through the difficult bits.
Mm. Wonderful, wonderful. I'll link you in the show notes.
Mm.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being my colleague.
My pleasure. It's been a real pleasure meeting you and connecting with you, and I love your podcast.
Thank you.